48 hours ago, FIFA did something it almost never does. It reached for its most serious charge. Not once, 6 times, spread across 3 Argentina names in a single statement. Nahuel Molina, Leandro Paredes, Roberto Ayala. And here is the part nobody planned for. Argentina do not play a single qualifier before the next World Cup. Not one. So if these bans land, they are not served next month. They are served in 2030, at home. In the opening match, 4 years from the night it all fell apart. Start with the document, because this is the moment it stops being a viral clip and becomes a case. On the 29th of July, the FIFA Disciplinary Committee put out an update. Plain heading. No drama in the wording. Inside it, the committee says it has opened a case against 3 names: Nahuel Molina, Leandro Paredes, and the Argentine assistant coach Roberto Ayala, for possibly breaking Article 14 of its own code. The offense named in that article is the most serious one a governing body has: assault. Read the counts slowly, because the counts are the whole story. Molina faces 2, 1 completed and 1 attempted. Paredes faces 3. Ayala faces 1. That is 6 separate claims, sitting against 3 men from one team, from the events of a single night. And the committee is not done there. It has also opened lighter cases for unsporting behavior against Molina a second time, against the midfielder Thiago Almada, and against one Spain player, Gavi. But it is the heavier word that hangs over all of it. The word a governing body saves for its very worst nights. So this is no caution, it is a charge sheet. The accused have been told they can present their side, and then the committee will rule. Every name on that sheet is now waiting on a decision it does not control. The machine that hands down those rulings is already turning. Now the night that produced it. The 19th of July, New Jersey, the World Cup final. Spain against Argentina, the champions of the world against the country that had held the crown for 4 years. 90 minutes could not separate them. Extra time could. Ferran Torres struck the goal that made Spain champions and ended Argentina's reign 1-0. Even before the whistle, the game had begun to come apart. Enzo Fernandez had been sent off in the closing minutes, a second yellow for a wild challenge. The medals were minutes away. Then, the final whistle blew, and the pictures the world remembers are not of the trophy at all. Watch Molina first, because he lights the fuse. As Spain pour forward to celebrate, their captain Rodri runs past him, and Molina appears to throw an arm at the Spain midfielder as he goes by. Now hold on the target of that swing for a second, because it matters. Rodri had minutes earlier been named the best player of the entire tournament, the best footballer at the World Cup, taking a hit to the body on his way to celebrate winning it. He stops. He turns. He walks back toward the Argentina defender, shouting into his face. That is the spark. Within seconds, there are bodies pouring in from every direction. Spain and Argentina, players and staff, all tangled together on a pitch that was supposed to be hosting a party. Then Paredes. This is the one that makes people put a hand over their mouth. Paredes takes hold of the Spain defender Eric Garcia by the neck. Not a push to the chest, not a shirt pull, the neck. Moments later, he has the young Spain midfielder Gavi by his substitute bib, pulling him to the ground and pushing into his face while he is down. Spain's Borja Iglesias steps in to face him. The scene just keeps widening, one flare-up feeding the next, and the officials on the pitch can barely tell who is doing what to who. And then, the coach. Roberto Ayala, a man who once wore the captain's armband for Argentina himself, now an assistant on Lionel Scaloni's staff, appears on camera making contact with Spain's Dani Olmo, a member of the coaching team, right in the middle of the scuffle, hands flying. Ayala has since called it more of a push than anything, said he only stepped in to stop things blowing up, and promised to apologize to Olmo. That is his account, and he has every right to it. FIFA has charged him anyway. If you are wondering how a coach ends up on a charge sheet beside his own players, so is everyone else. But that is what the document says, in black and white, with his name spelled out. Here is the detail that tells you how strange the night became. During the chaos, FIFA's own official system briefly logged a red card against Paredes. The television channels showing the final told viewers he had been sent off, and then the entry simply vanished. FIFA later told reporters that no card was actually shown and no action was taken on the pitch at the time, which changes everything about how this plays out. because it means the punishment, if it comes, does not come from a card waved on the night. It comes now, cold, weeks later, through a review long after the fact. The red card that never was has quietly become a case that very much is. That deleted entry seemed like a small paperwork thing at the time. It was not. A card served on the night would have been served on the night, swallowed up in a game already lost. A ban handed down now, with no fixture waiting to catch it, has nowhere to go but forward. Hold on to that idea, because in a few minutes, it becomes the entire point. The clash is only half of what FIFA is looking at. Alongside the cases against the players and the coach, the committee has opened a separate and much bigger case against the Argentine Football Association itself. The charges there read like a walk back through the whole tournament. Team misconduct, failure to follow match and security rules, offensive chants and gestures, and using a sporting event for a demonstration of a non-sporting nature. 4 different articles of the code, stacked against one federation, for the behavior of one campaign. That last charge has a very clear target. After Argentina knocked England out in the semi-final, winning 2-1 through goals from Enzo Fernandez and Lautaro Martinez, several of their players unrolled a banner across the pitch. It claimed the Falkland Islands, the Malvinas, for Argentina. A direct message about who those islands belong to, held up in a stadium, at a World Cup over a group of islands that 2 nations actually went to war over in 1982. Paredes went further afterward, telling the cameras the islands will always be Argentine. FIFA's rules flatly ban political statements at its matches. The federation has now been charged over exactly that. The banner did more than earn a charge. It lit a fire well outside football. The British government itself weighed in within a day. The Prime Minister backed calls for FIFA to look into it, and a senior cabinet minister called the banner a clear breaking of the rules that keep politics off the pitch. Parts of the public went further, calling openly for Argentina to be thrown out of the next World Cup altogether. That is where this story bends into something almost cruel, because there is one thing FIFA cannot do to Argentina, no matter how loud the calls get. It cannot remove them from 2030. Their place is set in stone. Whole corners of social media spent those days demanding exactly that. Strip Argentina of the next tournament, they said, as punishment for how the team had carried itself through this one. In the middle of that noise, their place for 2030 was quietly locked in once again, untouchable. We will get to why in a moment, and once you understand it, every charge on that sheet starts to point at the same date. Because even the banner was not the first entry in Argentina's file this summer. There is a reason people inside the game had started watching this team differently long before the final. FIFA had already opened a case over Argentina's behavior in the quarterfinal against the Netherlands, pointing to order and security. Substitutes and staff had spilled onto the field in the closing chaos, and Paredes kicked a ball toward the Dutch bench. A quarterfinal case, a semifinal banner, a final flashpoint, 3 rounds in a row, the same team, the same file growing thicker at every stage. Here is what makes this file different from the usual end of tournament paperwork. Most cases like this fade because the punishment fades with them. A fine gets paid and forgotten. A single match ban gets served against nobody in particular on a quiet night, and the story dies with it. That is how football justice normally works. It is slow, and it is small, and it almost never touches the moments that matter. But every case FIFA has opened against Argentina this summer shares one strange and specific thing. There is no ordinary next match waiting to soak up any of it. Not for the federation, not for the players. Whatever this committee decides has to be served somewhere real, on a pitch, in a fixture that actually exists. The only match on Argentina's entire schedule is the one absolutely nobody in that dressing room wants to picture being spoiled. Every charge, every count, every name, all of it is drifting toward the same day on the calendar. The clock on the whole thing is already ticking, and it is counting down to one single date. A date that was supposed to be the greatest day in a generation of Argentine football. If you are following this the way it deserves to be followed, take 1 second and tap subscribe. This is going to run for months, through hearings and rulings and appeals, and this channel is going to track every single turn of it. Now, back to the part that turns a bad night into a 4-year problem. Because normally, a World Cup ban is barely a story. You pick up a suspension, You sit out a match or two, and you serve them in the next round of qualifiers against some smaller nation on a cold night more than a year later. By the time the next tournament comes around, nobody even remembers. That is how football usually takes punishment. Quietly and long before it matters. That is not how it works for Argentina. Not this time. Argentina do not have a next round of qualifiers. They are already in the 2030 World Cup. They locked their place years ago, and not because of a single kick of a ball. The 2030 tournament is a centenary edition. It marks 100 years since the very first World Cup, held in 1930. Most of it is hosted by Spain, Portugal, and Morocco. But 3 matches are handed to South America, 1 each to Uruguay, Paraguay, and Argentina, to honor the ground where the whole thing was born. Every host nation, Argentina included, qualifies automatically. No group stage of qualifiers, no playoff. A place guaranteed, settled long ago at a FIFA Congress, well before any of this trouble began. The 3 South American matches are set for the 8th and 9th of June that year. They are brought forward a few days ahead of the main opening across Europe and Africa, which means Argentina's game is more than their first match of the tournament. It is one of the very first matches of the entire World Cup, shown live around the world, the eyes of the sport all in one place. So sit with what that actually means for these players. Argentina will not play a single competitive World Cup match between right now and the 2030 tournament. Not one. Their very next World Cup fixture is their own opening game, on home soil in Buenos Aires in front of their own people for the first time in 100 years. Under FIFA's rules, that opening game is the next available match on which any World Cup suspension can be served. You can see the shape of it now, and it is brutal. A ban picked up in the chaos of a July night in New Jersey has, quite literally, only one place to land: Buenos Aires. Opening night, the single game an entire country has been promised as its homecoming. Think about what that would look like for the men on that sheet. A home World Cup comes around once in several lifetimes. For most of these players, it is the last major tournament they will ever have a real shot at. The punishment, if it lands, does not take some forgettable qualifier away from them. It takes that. The walkout in their own country, in front of their own families, in the one stadium they have dreamed about since they were children, served, not for something they will do in 2030, but for 90 chaotic seconds 4 years earlier. This is where the reporting runs slightly ahead of the ruling, and it is worth being clear about the difference. FIFA, in its own statement, has charged 3 players over the final: Molina, Paredes, and Almada. But according to reporting in the British press, as many as 6 Argentina players could in the end be swept up in all of this before it is finished. The 3 from the clash, and 3 more named over the banner: the defenders Christian Romero and Lisandro Martinez, and the midfielder Giovanni Lo Celso, all tied to the display after the England game. FIFA has not, so far, charged those 3 by name. The banner case, for now, sits against the Federation. But if the committee decides those men must answer for it too, the count of Argentina players staring at the 2030 opener with a suspension over their heads climbs quickly. It climbs toward that number 6. For Lionel Scaloni, this is not a distant headline. These are not spare parts. Molina, Romero, and Lisandro Martinez have started at the back for Argentina for years, and Paredes has anchored the midfield through the whole of this golden era. A home World Cup is hard enough to build toward. Building toward one without knowing whether 4 or 5 of your first-choice starters will even be allowed to walk out for the opening match is a different problem entirely. It is a problem Scaloni now carries, quietly, for the next 4 years, every time he picks a squad. And this is the part that even Argentina's own supporters find hard to argue away, because none of this rests on a disputed offside or a soft penalty or a referee's call gone against them. There is nothing here to argue over again: a hand closing on a neck, an arm thrown at a rival captain, a coach in the thick of it on the pitch, a banner held up for a whole stadium and the watching world to see. The footage exists. It has been watched millions of times over. What is in question is not whether these things happened, only what they cost. So what can FIFA actually hand down? Cases like these under Article 14 carry real weight, not small fines. Bans are counted in matches, and for offenses the committee sees as serious, or for a player facing several counts at once, they can run well past a game or 2. This is written into how the bans work. A World Cup suspension that cannot be served inside the tournament carries over to a team's next competitive matches, not their friendlies. With no qualifiers in between to soak it up, that route leads straight to 2030. A 3-match ban for a player with nowhere to serve, it does not disappear. It waits. The longer the ban, the deeper into that home tournament it reaches. The committee has said only that it will give its decision when it is ready, once every named person has had the chance to answer. Roberto Ayala has already given his answer out loud. He called his part a push, nothing more, and promised his apology. He also claimed there had been a certain ill will toward the Argentina team all through the tournament, because they were doing well. It is a telling line, because it paints the clash as something done to Argentina rather than by them. Whether the committee sees ill will or something far more serious is now the only question that counts. As it stands tonight, the cases are open, the accused have been officially asked to reply, and not a single ban has actually been handed down yet. Nothing is final. Rodri has his Player of the Tournament award in a cabinet. Spain have a second star above their crest. Messi has walked off a World Cup pitch for what is almost certainly the last time in his career, in tears. A runner-up in the final act of the greatest run the game has seen. And somewhere inside a FIFA building, a committee is holding a decision that can reach 4 years into the future and lift names out of a match that has not even been played yet. This is not a punishment that gets served and forgotten. It is a punishment that sits and waits. Argentina were promised a homecoming in 2030. Whether every one of them is allowed to stand on that pitch when it finally comes is no longer a question Argentina gets to answer.